President Barack Obama pledges more forces to Syria to consolidate gains against the Islamic State. The International Criminal Court opens a preliminary probe into the violence that has racked Burundi. And Ivory Coast's first architecture school promotes the country's local design heritage. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin with the global war on terrorism. U.S. President Barack Obama announced Monday that he's sending up to 250 additional special forces troops to Syria to bolster gains made against the Islamic State terrorist group. Africa 54's Esther Githuayuwat reports.
Obama, speaking Monday in Hanover, Germany, said a small number of U.S. Special Operation Forces are already on the ground in Syria, and they have been successful in driving Islamic State fighters out of key areas.
So given the success, I've approved the deployment of up to 250 additional U.S. personnel in Syria, including special forces, to keep up this momentum. They're not going to be leading the fight on the ground, but they will be essential in providing the training and assisting local forces they continue to drive ISIL back.
But as he made the announcement, Obama also called on European allies to step up their efforts. He said the U.S. cannot win the battle by itself, but rather would rely on a strong Europe to bear its share of the burden for our shared security. He said a united Europe makes the world safer, more prosperous and free.
So I've come here today to the heart of Europe to say that the United States and the entire world needs a strong and prosperous and democratic and united Europe.
Later Monday, Obama met with leaders from France, Britain, Germany and Italy to discuss what those countries can contribute to the fight against Islamic State in terms of troops and financial support. Early in the day, Obama toured the world's largest industrial technology fair in Hanover. He touted U.S. innovation and called for more international cooperation. Esther Githuayuwat, VOA News, Washington.
In West Africa, Boko Haram is on the rampage in the northeastern Nigeria and the surrounding region. The violent extremist group uses tactics such as slavery and child suicide bombers to advance its goal of creating an Islamic caliphate. Fighting Boko Haram's insurgency poses a difficult challenge in rural areas where education levels are low. VOA senior investigative analyst Jeffrey Young has more.
They vanished 2 years ago this month. 276 Nigerian schoolgirls abducted by the Islamist group Boko Haram from the northeast city of Chibok. Recently, a Boko Haram video was released, raising hopes that the girls may be found and rescued. But officials and analysts think the video may advance multiple Boko Haram objectives. One is taunting Nigeria by showing proof that Abuja's campaign to crush Boko Haram is failing. That contradicts statements to the contrary by Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Samantha Power visited Cameroon this month, where she made it clear the United States and its regional partners are working hard to locate and release these Nigerian girls. Meanwhile, the New York Times quotes a Cameroonian government spokesperson as putting forth another possible reason for the video's release. It may be a sign Boko Haram wants to negotiate. Nigeria had demanded proof that the girls are alive as a condition for possible talks. Boko Haram now claims it is aligned with the Islamic State, creating the title ISWAF for Islamic State West Africa. The group's leader, Abubakar Shekau, previously said the group's goal was to establish an Islamic caliphate in northern Nigeria and surrounding areas. But Jennifer Cook, Africa Director of Washington Center for Strategic and International Studies, says its real aims are hard to figure.
Now it's become, as I say, kind of a nihilistic killing machine whose purpose is to sustain itself almost through fear, through looting, through violence. It's significantly weakened right now, and it's fractured, and there are different elements that may want different things. It's very hard to discern any real political agenda at this point.
Boko Haram's bloody campaign has been countered in recent years as military forces from Nigeria and its neighbors strengthen to meet the terrorist challenge. That has triggered a rising Boko Haram response. Here's Amy Pate of the University of Maryland Start Center on Terrorism Research.
They contract geographically, but the frequency and the lethality of their attacks go through the roof. Part of this is because when the military flooded the region, they brought a lot of extra higher grade equipment that then Boko Haram stole. So all of a sudden they have guns that are better at killing people. They're gaining experience, and it becomes a conflict spiral. So as the state increases its violence, Boko Haram increases its violence. State increases
Pate says Boko Haram is trying to replace killed fighters through forced conscriptions of civilians in areas it controls, including teenagers and children, and hiring mercenaries. Because Boko Haram has spread from Nigeria into neighboring Niger, Cameroon, and Chad, several African countries are responding with a coordinated intelligence and military campaign. The U.S. Africa Command, or U.S. AFRICOM, is training state forces to respond effectively and to prevent Boko Haram from strengthening ties to other Islamist radicals in Africa. U.S. AFRICOM's Commander General David Rodriguez told the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee last month that stopping Boko Haram will take more than bullets.
Effectively addressing the threat before, during, or after a military crisis requires a comprehensive approach employing diplomacy, development, and defense to address the root causes of extremism and replace fear and uncertainty with trust and confidence in African institutions.
The consensus among experts is that the key to defeating Boko Haram is winning the confidence of the people in the region where the terrorists have a following. That includes providing better education and economic development that gives people there a stake in peace and progress. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.
Well, the medical relief charity Médecins Sans Frontières says it has launched rescue operations in the Mediterranean Sea after accusing European governments of failing to act to save migrants in peril at sea. An MSF rescue boat arrived in Sicily on Monday carrying 308 migrants who were rescued. The vessel Dignity 1, which docked in the port of Pozzallo, was returning from its first rescue operation of 2016. According to an MSF statement, the rescued migrants were mainly Eritrean nationals and included 80 women and 23 children. MSF halted its maritime rescue program in January, saying it hoped European Union member states would pick up the task of search and rescue of migrants and refugees, anticipating the crossing from North Africa to Europe. The International War Crimes Court is set to investigate outbreaks of violence in Burundi that has killed over 400 people and continues to force hundreds of thousands to flee abroad since the political crisis erupted 1 year ago. President Pierre Nkurunziza's bid for a third term and his eventual win last July triggered the unrest. Today, tensions are continuing to escalate in the East African country. Susan Misago has been living in the Nduta refugee camp across the border from Burundi in northwestern Tanzania since February. Misago says she watched anti-government militia in Burundi rip apart her family.
It was midday and the children had come from school. They found us at home. I went to the kitchen to look for food to feed the children, and minutes later some soldiers arrived and circled the plot, and then came and killed my children and slit my husband's throat.
Misago is one of around 135,000 Burundian refugees in the refugee camp who have escaped horrors at home. There are new arrivals at Nduta every day. They speak of torture, disappearances, massacres of loved ones, and the arrest and detention of neighbors on the border.
I lost 7 members of my family. I'm so grief-stricken that I sometimes feel like I'm going crazy.
According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, the number of Burundian refugees seeking shelter in the neighboring countries has reached 250,000, and the numbers could rise even higher. Manasseh Gahungu arrived at Nduta camp a few months ago with his wife and son. He says he was arrested by pro-government forces that killed his 3 brothers. He made it across the border, but says many are unable to get out.
They would pick people up, and then put them in jail. And at night, they would take some of them and go kill them.
The UN agency and its partners are struggling to provide the much-needed life-saving services to the refugees. UNHCR has requested $175 million for the Burundi humanitarian response in 2016. So far, it has received only $4.7 million, or about 3%.
We need to pay attention to the hardship that the refugees are having in the camps in Tanzania. We cannot fail this caseload.
At least 3 armed rebel groups have emerged in Burundi since the political crisis erupted. Kenyan police on Monday used tear gas to disperse opposition supporters and leaders who were protesting outside the offices of the country's electoral commission. Opposition leaders led about 500 supporters who waved placards, whistled and shouted as they threw stones at police on their way to the commission's office in downtown Nairobi. Proud police used tear gas to disperse the demonstrators. The opposition leaders are questioning the neutrality of the commission and are asking for it to be disbanded ahead of general elections in 2017. Kenya spiraled into post-election violence in 2007 that led to the death of over 1,000 civilians and the displacement of over 600,000 people from their homes. Now, for more on the unrest, Esther Kahumbi is a reporter with Citizen TV, joins me by phone from Nairobi. Good evening, Esther.
Good evening, Vincent.
Yes, now, what has prompted this protest? Why the demands for a new commission?
Well, the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy has been agitating for electoral reforms for a while now. They say they don't have confidence in the electoral body as is constituted to conduct the next general election. They say the body is under the influence of the ruling party, that is Jubilee, which manipulated the forces that had initiated to start a referendum or have a referendum to oversee a new electoral body, have new commissioners, and they say that the Jubilee Party ruined that by ensuring that the signatures they had were not enough. So they say this is the only way to have these commissioners out of office.
But Esther, these guys and ladies were actually duly appointed to these positions, and they were supposed to have been neutral. At what point did problems creep in?
Well, they say it began with this Okoa initiative. They're calling it the Okoa Kenya Initiative. They've had several by-elections, which they say were not free and fair. They want a new process. In fact, it started during 2013 elections. They say as much as they agreed to go with the Supreme Court decision that declared President Uhuru Kenyatta as the winner of that election, they say it wasn't free and fair. Their complaints were not heard by the court. And despite all the evidence they had about what had happened during the 2013 election, nothing really was done. They haven't seen any reforms. They haven't seen any changes. So they want this totally changed before we go into the next election. That's next year in August. So those are their complaints, and they say they will not participate in an election which is overseen by the commissioners as they are today.
Now, is this the only option they have to get these commissioners out? That is street action?
That's the thing. I mean, legally, the electoral body can only be reconstituted through a petition to Parliament. The opposition would have to present a petition. Parliament would have to approve it, showing cause for removal if there's any misconduct. Then they would present their findings to the president. The president then would form a tribunal to investigate those claims against them. And so, depending on the recommendations of the tribunal, the president can appoint new commissioners to serve in a new IEBC, but that would take a really long process, and that's what Code is saying, that's going to take a really, really long process, 15 months to the election. They say they don't have that much time. So, I mean, legally, this is not the only option they have. In fact, Jubilee have been holding rallies right across the country saying, why are they using such methods, spreading fear, and they want them to follow the law.
Okay. All right. Esther, we'll be watching this, definitely. Thank you very much. Esther Kahumbi is a reporter with Citizen TV in Nairobi. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vincent Makori. Well, coming up, the Ivory Coast's first architecture school is open for business. Stay with us.
This is BizBeat.
Thanks to technological advances in crop nutrition and improved education in soil management, the farming industry in Kenya is becoming a financially lucrative profession for young people. In fact, Anthony Manune returned home from America to run a farm on a half-acre of land leased from the Kenya Institute.
I have sat down and really reviewed my business plan so that I can work for profit.
Locally sourced produce might find its way into restaurants like the Mercantile Cafe, where manager Seth Johnson says he buys from local farmers for the quality.
We know the farmers. We know that they've picked it that morning and that they've brought it directly to us.
3/4 of Kenyans are under the age of 34, and while older farmers have been reluctant to adapt to the new technology, younger farmers like Manune are excited about their prospects in the agricultural field, expecting more satisfaction and profit from their crops. For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
The National Order of Architects has opened Ivory Coast's first professional architecture school, meaning students no longer have to go abroad to learn the trade. In addition to design and theory, professors want the country's next generation of architects to have an understanding of the nation's specific building needs and heritage. Emily Eob reports from Abidjan.
With its open stage overlooking the lagoon, the Palais de la Culture in Abidjan is one of the landmarks of the Ivorian economic capital.
La plupart des personnes n'entendaient pas ce que c'était un théâtre à ciel ouvert.
At first, they wanted blueprints for an indoor theater. We told them that we are in Africa. We party in open areas, not indoors. So this is an open space turned toward the city so it can be part of the design.
La ville puisse participer.
Architect Francis Sosa designed it. He's now a professor at the architecture school that he and other Ivorian colleagues launched in December. The goal is to train a new generation of architects to meet the demand of this fast-developing country.
On n'était pas assez nombreux. Nous sommes 25 millions d'habitants, on est 200 architectes.
We don't have enough architects. There are 25 million people in Ivory Coast and 200 architects. That's even less than the number of architects in one neighborhood in Paris. We often have to seek help from professionals outside Ivory Coast, so that was the main motivation.
Donc déjà, c'est la motivation essentielle.
The first class has 19 students. Before, the closest architecture school was in Togo, 800 kilometers and 2 countries away. Many students went to France or the United States to study. Student Marie-Danielle Kanga says she wants to build better housing for poor city residents.
Comme problème, il y a l'anarchie. Tout n'est pas réglementé.
Nothing is regulated. You can build as you want, where you want, when you want. If there is a generation of Ivorian architects who know the realities of our country, then we can tackle these issues.
Travailler sur ce plan-là.
The training includes field trips around Ivory Coast so students can get inspired.
It has allowed us to get to learn about our heritage, how architecture can be made from earth. Mosques made from earth. We should preserve this and even continue doing it. When jobs come up, builders here often go with a modernist style, but traditional can be good too.
The students have 6 years of study ahead of them. One day their sketches may become hospitals, schools, high-rise buildings, and even future landmarks dotting the city's skyline. Emily Eob for VOA News in Abidjan.
And on a sad note, a Congolese rumba music legend, Papa Wemba, died after collapsing on stage in the Ivory Coast in the early hours of Sunday morning. Now, the music legend was renowned as the king of Congolese rumba for the fusion of Cuban and electronic rock that he pioneered in the 1970s. He was 66 years old. Wemba, born in 1949, was performing at the Urban Music Festival and Numabo in Abidjan, the first major cultural event in the country since a jihadist attack on a beach resort last month. Videos posted online showed the artist falling on his back in mid-song before band members rushed to his side. He died before reaching the hospital. Wemba's career began in the late 1960s, and he became a staple of African music over the following decades. He was involved in the bands Zaiko Langa Langa and later Viva la Musica that reached worldwide audiences. Wemba was also known for mixing traditional African music with Western rock. The Rumba King also worked with international stars such as former Genesis singer Peter Gabriel. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. A member of Washington, D.C.'s Georgetown University women's basketball team is breaking down barriers. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Egypt, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi warns that security forces will deal firmly with anti-government protesters. In Equatorial Guinea, Africa's longest-serving leader, President Théodore Obiang-Nguema, is expected to win another 7-year term in Sunday's presidential elections. In Tunisia, a startup company inspired by sailing boats of ancient Carthage develops a low-cost wind energy converter to help off-grid homes in developing countries. Influential Congolese musician Papa Wemba has died at 66 after collapsing on stage. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back, and here's what's trending. President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama made a showy entrance to Windsor Castle for a celebration of Queen Elizabeth's 90th birthday. Mr. Obama was kicking off a day of royal events that included a bedtime greeting for the young Prince George, third in line to the throne. The little prince looked happy as he played with the rocking horse he was gifted by the Obamas. The president later said he was glad he met the adorable prince. And now comes word that the bathrobe the tiny royal and fashion icon was wearing when he met the Obamas has sold out. Well, next up, this is Villa 31, one of the most infamous slums in the Argentine capital of Buenos Aires. One constructive voice comes from FM 88.1. The millennium continues. One wavelength at a time, the radio station streams an alternative for the young people of Villa 31. Tune in and opt out of the risks that lie in the streets. Since 1999, more than 600 young people have sat behind the microphone. Participants can try their hand as producer, host, or writer. The station has jump-started many of its young people to future jobs in communications, and that is what is trending today. Well, speaking of tough neighborhood, if we stay with that now, in South Central Los Angeles, food choices are limited, and obesity is on the rise. One man is launching a crusade against unhealthy food by inspiring young people about the pleasures of growing your own fruits and vegetables. Activist Ron Finley is known by most people as the gangster gardener. These children are all part of a place called Home, a nonprofit volunteer-supported after-school program for South Central. Its team is committed to creating out curbside gardens and teaching teens about healthy eating. Last year, the teens grew over 1,000 pounds of fresh vegetables and herbs. And the food grown here goes straight through the kitchen of a place called Home, where the children will also learn cooking skills and perhaps helping to break the cycle of reliance on fast food and junk food. Now, that's what's trending today. Well, Kike Rafiu is a senior at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. She not only plays for the university's basketball team, but Rafiu does so while wearing a hijab. Mawal City tells us more.
A native of Nigeria, Kike received a full scholarship to attend Georgetown University and pursue her passion for basketball.
When I started, I played a little bit in Nigeria. It was more, when I started playing, I just fell in love with it, you know. It's just something that stumbles into your life and just never leaves.
Although Kike loves the sport, her family was not always supportive of her decision to play.
At first, they just thought it was a thing of leisure and just, oh, she's going to grow out of it. She's going to get tired of it. And the more passionate I got about it and the more serious I got, and I started dedicating more time into it, then they started to worry, like, this girl is taking this thing seriously. We got to find a way to stop her. They did try to stop me, but I guess my passion and my grit was greater than theirs.
Kike continued to play collegiate basketball, and during her sophomore year, she decided to wear hijab both off and on the court.
This kind of like triggered a lot of questions about Islam in our locker room too, you know. Talk about when they see me pray, like, oh, Kike, so do you pray 5 times a day? So what does this mean, you know? And I always, you know, they always listen, you know, ready to learn about religion. So to me, this is like an environment that was diverse and was inclusive. You know, I was expecting that, oh, maybe if I'm praying in the locker room, they're going to be staring at me. And it's so interesting how when I'm praying, they all go quiet. They're just like, shh, shh, just praying. And yeah, that was, you know, moments like that, you know, just make me appreciate my teammate more.
She used her passion for basketball to start an organization in Nigeria called Girls Rise Up.
We're trying to use sport as a tool for development and girls' empowerment. We're not just trying to get girls to play sports, but we're trying to get them to see sport as a vehicle to achieve whatever it is they want to attain in life. In my country, when they say, oh, I want my daughter to go to school, graduate, find a man and get married, I always tell people, we don't have to see our dreams manifest in our spouse. You can see it manifesting yourself. You want to be a doctor? Go ahead and be a doctor. I don't have to get married to a doctor to see my dream manifest.
Kike recently received a grant of $3,500 towards her Girls Rise Up organization. She also collects shoes and basketball equipment for the organization and wants to dedicate her time to empower girls in Nigeria and across the continent after graduating. Moaz Sidi for VOA News, Washington.
Well, in other sports news, Kenyans won big inside his London Marathon. Eliud Kipchoge won the event in a course record 2 hours, 3 minutes and 55 seconds, shattering the record by 46 seconds. It's the second fastest time in marathon history. In the women's competition, Kenyan Jemima Samgang survived a late fall with 8 kilometers to go to win the London Marathon. She beat Ethiopia's Tigist Tufa by just 5 seconds. Samsung's winning time was 2 hours and 22 minutes and 58 seconds. And that's our show for today. Please be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. If something knocks your socks off, is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Knock your socks off.
Hey, great job in the play last night. I was really impressed.
Thank you so much. And thank you for coming to the opening night.
Well, I couldn't believe it was you up there. The whole play really knocked my socks off. Maybe it's time you gave up your day job after all.
If something knocks your socks off, it means you're really impressed and maybe a bit surprised. In the past, to knock someone's socks off actually meant to defeat someone. But today, we use this idiom in a very positive way. In the example, Jonathan's performance really knocked Anna's socks off. And that's English in a Minute.